The day I found out my husband's affair partner was my therapist, I realized I'd been telling my secrets to the very woman who was stealing my life. I still remember the way the rain tapped against the window that morning, soft and steady, as if the world was trying to hush the storm inside my heart. I was sitting at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea, watching the gray sky blur the garden outside. My husband, Daniel, was upstairs, getting ready for work. I could hear the water running in the shower, the low hum of his voice as he sang an old song I used to love. We'd been married for 12 years. Daniel was the kind of man who made people feel at ease, charming, funny, the life of every party. He worked in finance, long hours and late nights, but he always made time for me, or so I thought. We built a life together in this house, a life of routines and rituals, of Sunday pancakes and Friday movie nights, of whispered promises in the dark. But lately, something had changed. Daniel was distant, distracted. He came home later and later, his excuses growing thinner, his smiles more forced. I told myself it was just stress, that work was hard, that every marriage had its seasons. But deep down, I felt the chill of something I couldn't name. That's why I started seeing Dr. Morgan. She came highly recommended, a therapist with a gentle voice and kind eyes, an office filled with soft light and the scent of lavender. I'd never been to therapy before, but after weeks of sleepless nights and silent dinners, I knew I needed help. I needed someone to talk to, someone who would listen without judgment, someone who could help me find my way back to myself. Dr. Morgan was everything I hoped for. She listened, really listened, her gaze steady and warm. She asked questions that made me think, that made me cry, that made me laugh at the absurdity of my own fears. I told her everything, about Daniel, about our marriage, about the loneliness that had crept in like a fog. She never rushed me, never made me feel small. She gave me homework, journaling, breathing exercises, small acts of self-care. I left her office each week feeling lighter, as if I'd set down a burden I didn't know I was carrying. I trusted her. I trusted her with my pain, my hopes, my secrets. I never imagined she was keeping secrets of her own. That morning, Daniel came downstairs, his hair still damp, his tie crooked. He smiled at me, that old, familiar smile, and kissed the top of my head. "Big day at work?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He nodded, grabbing his briefcase. "Yeah, lots of meetings. I'll be home late." I watched him go, the door closing softly behind him. I sat there for a long time, listening to the rain, wondering when our life had become so quiet. Later that day, I had my session with Dr. Morgan. Her office was a haven, soft chairs, a wall of books, a window overlooking the city. She greeted me with a smile, her voice gentle. "How are you today, Claire?" I shrugged, sinking into the chair. "Tired, lonely, I don't know." She nodded, her eyes kind. "It's okay to feel that way. You've been carrying a lot." I told her about Daniel, about the distance between us, about the way I felt invisible in my own home. She listened, offering small words of comfort, gentle suggestions for how to reconnect. "Have you tried talking to him?" she asked. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "He just says he's tired, that work is hard. I don't want to push him away." She leaned forward, her voice soft. "You deserve to be seen, Claire. You deserve to be loved." I left her office feeling hopeful, as if maybe things could get better. But I had no idea how much worse they were about to become. Don't go anywhere, because what happened next would shatter everything I thought I knew about trust, love, and the people I let into my heart. Before everything fell apart, my life was a patchwork of small comforts and familiar routines. I worked part-time at the local library, a job I'd taken after Emma, our daughter, started high school. The library was quiet, a place where the world made sense. Books in neat rows, stories with beginnings and endings, people who came and went with a smile and a thank you. I loved the smell of old paper, the hush of the reading room, the way the afternoon sun slanted through the tall windows. Daniel and I had built a life that looked good from the outside. We had a cozy house on a tree-lined street, a daughter who made us proud, friends who came over for barbecues in the summer and game nights in the winter. We took vacations to the lake, sent Christmas cards with matching sweaters, celebrated anniversaries with dinner at the same Italian restaurant every year. But beneath the surface, Cracks had started to show. Emma was growing up, pulling away in the way teenagers do, more interested in her friends, her phone, her own world. Daniel worked longer hours, his job in finance demanding more and more of his time. I tried to keep us all connected, family dinners, movie nights, Sunday walks in the park, but it felt like I was holding together a house made of sand. I started to feel invisible. I'd walk into a room and Daniel wouldn't look up from his laptop. I'd ask Emma about her day and get a shrug, a mumbled fine. I told myself it was just a phase, that every family went through rough patches, that things would get better if I just tried harder. That's when the anxiety started. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my heart racing, convinced something was wrong. I'd lie awake, listening to Daniel's steady breathing, wondering if he was dreaming of someone else. I started to doubt myself, my worth, my place in the world, my ability to hold my family together. That's why I reached out to Dr. Morgan. I'd never been to therapy before, but I was desperate for someone to listen, someone to help me make sense of the mess inside my head. From the first session, I felt a weight lift. Dr. Morgan was patient, never judging, always encouraging. She helped me see that my feelings were valid, that I wasn't crazy or broken, just human. I started journaling as she suggested. I wrote about my fears, my hopes, the things I missed about the early days of my marriage. I wrote about Daniel's laugh, the way he used to dance with me in the kitchen, the way he'd hold my hand during scary movies. I wrote about Emma's first steps, her first day of school, the way she used to crawl into bed with us during thunderstorms. I wrote about the loneliness, too, the way it crept in around the edges, filling the spaces Daniel and Emma used to occupy. I wrote about the ache in my chest, the longing for something I couldn't name. Through it all, Dr. Morgan was there. She listened to my stories, offered gentle advice, helped me find small ways to care for myself. She encouraged me to reach out to Daniel, to be honest about my feelings, to ask for what I needed. I tried, I really did. I planned a weekend getaway, just the two of us, hopping to rekindle the spark. Daniel agreed, but when the weekend came, he canceled at the last minute. Work emergency, he said, maybe next month. I tried not to let it hurt, but it did. I started to notice little things. Daniel's phone always face down on the table, late-night texts he wouldn't explain, a new cologne I didn't recognize. I told myself I was being paranoid, that therapy was making me see problems where there were none. But the doubt lingered, growing with each unanswered question. One night, after Daniel had gone to bed, I sat in the living room, staring at the family photos on the mantel. I wondered when we'd stopped being a team, when we'd started living parallel lives. I wondered if it was my fault, if I'd done something to push him away. I brought these worries to Dr. Morgan. She listened, her eyes kind, her voice soothing. "You're not alone, Claire. So many women feel this way. Marriage is hard. Life is hard, but you're doing your best." I left her office that day feeling a little lighter, a little less alone. But I had no idea that the person I trusted most with my pain was the very one who was deepening it behind my back. Don't go anywhere, because the first cracks of suspicion were about to become impossible to ignore. It started with a scent. One evening, Daniel came home late, the house already dark except for the lamp I'd left on in the living room. I was curled up on the couch, reading, trying to keep my eyes open until he walked through the door. When he finally did, I caught a whiff of something unfamiliar, floral, expensive, not the cologne he usually wore. It lingered in the air as he kissed my cheek, a little too quickly, and mumbled an apology for being late. "Long day?" I asked, searching his face for clues. He nodded, dropping his bag by the door. "Yeah, just tired. I'm going to shower." I watched him go, the unease in my stomach growing. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that I was just being sensitive, that the scent could have come from a coworker or a client, but the doubt wouldn't leave me. The next day, I mentioned it to Dr. Morgan during our session. She listened, her expression thoughtful. "Have you talked to Daniel about how you're feeling?" she asked. I shook my head, embarrassed. I don't want to seem jealous or paranoid. I don't know. Something feels off. She nodded, her voice gentle. "Trust your instincts, Claire, but don't jump to conclusions. Sometimes our fears are just that, fears." I left her office feeling both reassured and unsettled. I wanted to believe her, to believe that I was overthinking things, but the nagging suspicion remained. A week later, I found a receipt in Daniel's jacket pocket. It was for a restaurant across town, one we'd never been to together. The date matched a night he'd told me he was working late. I stared at the receipt, my heart pounding, trying to make sense of it. That night, I asked him about it, my voice casual. "Did you go out to dinner after work last Thursday?" He looked up from his laptop, surprised. "Oh, yeah. A few of us went out after a late meeting. I forgot to mention it." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Anyone I know?" He shook his head. "Just work people, you wouldn't know them." I wanted to believe him, but something in his tone made me pause. He was too quick, too smooth, as if he'd rehearsed the answer. The next day, I brought it up with Dr. Morgan. She listened, her eyes steady. "Do you trust Daniel?" she asked. I hesitated. "I want to, but I feel like he's hiding something." She leaned forward, her voice soft. "It's okay to ask questions, Claire. You deserve honesty." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "I just want my marriage back. I want to feel close to him again." She offered a small smile. "Relationships go through ups and downs. Sometimes a little distance is just a phase." I left her office that day, feeling more confused than ever. A few days later, I noticed Daniel was texting more often, his phone always in his hand, his eyes lighting up at messages he wouldn't share. He started locking his phone, something he'd never done before. When I asked about it, he brushed me off. "Work stuff. Confidential." I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on my own life. My job at the library, my sessions with Dr. Morgan, my attempts to reconnect with Emma. But the distance between Daniel and me grew wider, the silence heavier. One night, after Daniel had gone to bed, I sat in the living room, scrolling through old photos on my phone. I found a picture of us on our 10th anniversary, smiling and happy, arms around each other. I stared at it, wondering where that couple had gone. I brought the photo to Dr. Morgan, hopping for comfort, for advice, for something to hold on to. She studied it for a moment, then looked at me, her eyes kind. "You're still that woman, Claire. You're still worthy of love." I nodded, but the ache in my chest wouldn't go away. The next week, Daniel left for a work retreat out of town. He packed quickly, barely looking at me as he said goodbye. I watched him drive away, the unease in my stomach growing into something sharper, more urgent. That night, I sat alone in the house, the silence pressing in on me. I tried to distract myself with a movie, with a book, with anything that would keep my mind from spinning. But the questions wouldn't stop. Where was Daniel, really? Who was he with? And why did I feel like I was losing everything piece by piece? Don't go anywhere, because the truth was about to come out, and it would change everything I thought I knew about trust, love, and the people I let into my heart. Daniel's work retreat lasted 3 days. He called each night, his voice warm but distant, always with a reason to keep the conversation short. "I'm exhausted, Claire. Long meetings. I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" I told him I loved him, and he said it back, but the words felt thin, like a script he was reading from memory. On the second night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered the house, restless, my mind spinning with worry. I ended up in Daniel's office, a room I rarely entered. I sat at his desk, running my fingers over the neat stacks of paper, the framed photos of our family, the little trinkets he'd collected over the years. That's when I noticed his laptop, left open on the desk. I hesitated, guilt prickling at my conscience, but the need for answers was stronger. I sat down, my hands trembling, and opened his email. At first, there was nothing unusual. Work messages, newsletters, the usual spam. But then I saw a folder labeled personal. I clicked it open, my heart pounding. There were dozens of emails, all from the same address. The name was familiar, but it took me a moment to place it. Dr. Morgan. I stared at the screen, disbelief flooding through me. Why would Daniel be emailing my therapist? I opened the most recent message. My eyes scanning the words. "I can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing. I wish we didn't have to hide." My breath caught in my throat. I scrolled through the messages, each one more intimate than the last, plans to meet, confessions of love, inside jokes I didn't understand. There were references to our sessions, to things I'd told Dr. Morgan in confidence. My stomach twisted as I realized she'd been using my secrets, my pain, to get closer to Daniel. I felt sick, the room spinning around me. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking, and stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it before I threw up. The next morning, I called Carla, my voice shaking. "I need you," I whispered. "Please come over." She arrived within the hour, her arms full of groceries, her eyes full of concern. I told her everything, about Daniel, about Dr. Morgan, about the emails. She listened, her face growing hard with anger. "That's a violation, Claire. She's supposed to help you, not hurt you. You have to confront them." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I don't know if I can. I feel so stupid. I trusted her. I told her everything." Carla hugged me, holding me tight. "This isn't your fault. You did nothing wrong." When Daniel came home that night, I was waiting for him in the living room. I'd printed out the emails, the evidence of his betrayal, and laid them on the coffee table. He walked in, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Hey, honey, I missed you." I stood, my hands clenched at my sides. Did you miss her?" He froze, his eyes darting to the papers on the table. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he sat down, his shoulders slumping. "I'm sorry, Claire," he whispered. "I never meant for you to find out like this." I stared at him, anger and heartbreak warring inside me. "How long?" He looked away. 6 months. It started after you began seeing her. She reached out to me, said she was worried about you. We started talking, and it just happened." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "You lied to me. You both did. I trusted you. I trusted her." He reached for me, but I pulled away. Just don't." He sat there, silent. As I walked out of the room, the door closing behind me with a finality that echoed through the empty house. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I thought about all the things I'd shared with Dr. Morgan, all my fears, my hopes, my secrets. I thought about Daniel, about the life we'd built together, about the love I thought we shared. I realized, in that moment, that I didn't know either of them at all. Don't go anywhere, because the fallout from this betrayal would reach further than I ever imagined, and the path to healing would be longer and harder than I ever expected. The days after the truth came out were a blur of pain and disbelief. I moved through the house like a ghost, haunted by memories of laughter and love that now felt like lies. Daniel tried to talk to me, to explain, but I couldn't bear to look at him. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dr. Morgan's face, her kind smile, her gentle voice, the way she'd leaned in and told me I was safe. I called the therapy office and asked to speak to the director. My voice shook as I explained what had happened, how Dr. Morgan had crossed every line, how she'd used my pain to get close to my husband. The director was horrified. "This is a serious violation, Claire. We'll open an investigation immediately. You don't have to see her again. You never have to speak to her again." I hung up, feeling both relief and shame. I wondered how many other women had trusted Dr. Morgan, how many other secrets she'd collected and used for her own gain. Word spread quickly, as it always does in small towns. Carla told me that people were talking, at the library, at the grocery store, even at church. Some offered sympathy, others whispered behind my back. I heard someone say, "She must have done something to drive him away. Therapists don't just fall for their clients' husbands." I tried to hold my head high, to remind myself that I'd done nothing wrong. But the isolation was crushing. Even Emma, my daughter, pulled away. She was angry, confused, embarrassed by the scandal. She stopped coming home after school, spent more time at friends' houses, barely spoke to me at dinner. One afternoon, I found her in her room, packing a bag. "Where are you going?" I asked, my voice trembling. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad said I could stay with him for a while. I need space, Mom." I nodded, swallowing my pain. "I understand. I love you, Emma, no matter what." She hesitated, then hugged me, her arms tight around my waist. "I love you too. I just wish things were different." Daniel moved out a week later. He found an apartment across town, close to his office. He tried to see Emma as often as he could, but the tension between us made every exchange awkward and strained. He called sometimes, his voice full of regret. "I'm sorry, Claire. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt Emma." I listened, but I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. Dr. Morgan lost her license. The board found her guilty of professional misconduct, of violating the trust of her clients, of exploiting her position for personal gain. She sent me a letter, pages of apologies, explanations, pleas for forgiveness. I read it once, then burned it in the fireplace, watching the words curl and blacken in the flames. But the damage was done. My marriage was over. My trust was shattered. My sense of safety, of belonging, was gone. I started seeing a new therapist, a woman named Dr. Patel. She was different from Dr. Morgan, more reserved, less eager to offer advice, more willing to let me sit in silence. She helped me see that healing would take time, that I didn't have to have all the answers, that it was okay to be angry, to be sad, to be lost. I leaned on Carla, on the few friends who still believed in me. I spent long hours at the library, losing myself in books, in stories that offered escape and hope. I started journaling again, pouring my pain onto the page, trying to make sense of the mess my life had become. I missed Emma. I missed the way she used to curl up beside me on the couch, the way she'd laugh at my jokes, the way she'd confide in me about her dreams and fears. I called her every night, left messages when she didn't answer, sent texts full of love and encouragement. Slowly, she started to come back. She'd stop by after school, help me make dinner, ask for help with her homework. We talked about everything, about Daniel, about Dr. Morgan, about the ways we'd both been hurt. One night, as we sat on the porch watching the stars, she took my hand. "I'm sorry, Mom. I was angry. I didn't know who to blame. But I know you did your best. I know you love me." I hugged her, tears streaming down my face. "I love you, Emma, always." The scandal faded, as scandals always do. People found new things to gossip about, new stories to tell. But the scars remained, on my heart, on my family, on the life I'd tried so hard to build. But I was still here. I was still standing. And I was determined to find my way back to myself. Don't go anywhere. The journey to healing and new beginnings is just beginning, and it's for anyone who's ever had to rebuild after betrayal. Spring came slowly that year, as if the world itself was learning to trust again. I found myself drawn to the garden, my hands in the dirt, coaxing life from the cold ground. I planted daffodils and tulips, tomatoes and basil, letting the rhythm of the seasons remind me that nothing stays broken forever. Each green shoot was a small act of hope, a promise that beauty could return even after the harshest winter. Emma and I rebuilt our relationship, one conversation at a time. We started taking walks together in the evenings, talking about school, about her friends, about the future. She told me about her dreams, college, travel, maybe even becoming a writer. I listened, proud and grateful, determined to be the mother she needed, even if our family looked different now. I started volunteering at the women's shelter downtown, helping other women who'd been betrayed, who'd lost their sense of safety and self. I listened to their stories, shared my own, and found comfort in the knowledge that I wasn't alone. We laughed together, cried together, celebrated every small victory. I realized that healing wasn't just about moving on, it was about reaching back, about helping others find their way through the darkness. Carla remained my anchor. She came over every week, bringing flowers from her garden, new books to read, and stories from her own life. We cooked together, watched old movies, sat on the porch with mugs of tea, letting the silence between us be a kind of prayer. She reminded me that friendship could be a lifeline, that love could survive even the deepest wounds. I saw Dr. Patel every Thursday. She helped me untangle the knots of guilt and anger, helped me forgive myself for not seeing the truth, for trusting the wrong people. She taught me to set boundaries, to ask for what I needed, to believe that I was worthy of love and respect. Daniel tried to make amends. He apologized over and over, sent flowers, wrote letters, asked if we could try again. I listened, but I knew I couldn't go back. Too much had been broken, too much trust lost. I wished him well, told him I hoped he'd find happiness, but I closed the door on that chapter of my life. Dr. Morgan moved away. I heard through the grapevine that she'd started over in another city, that she was working in a bookstore, that she'd changed her name. I felt a strange mix of anger and pity. I hoped she'd learned something, that she'd never hurt anyone the way she'd hurt me. One afternoon, as I was weeding the garden, Emma came outside, her face bright with excitement. "Mom, look," she said, holding out a letter. "I got into my first choice college." I hugged her, laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You're going to do amazing things." She grinned, her eyes shining. "I couldn't have done it without you." I watched her run back inside, my heart full. I realized in that moment that I was happy. Not the old kind of happy, the kind that comes from having everything you want, but a deeper, quieter happiness. The kind that comes from surviving, from growing, from choosing hope over despair. I started writing again, filling journals with stories and poems, letters to myself and to Emma, to the woman I used to be and the woman I was becoming. I wrote about forgiveness, about resilience, about the way love can heal even the deepest wounds. I opened the windows, let the fresh air fill the house, and felt the weight of the past begin to lift. I wasn't the same woman I'd been before Daniel's betrayal, before Dr. Morgan's lies. I was stronger, wiser, more compassionate with myself and with the people I loved. I knew that life would never be perfect, that there would always be pain and loss and disappointment. But I also knew that I could survive, that I could rebuild, that I could find joy in the small, everyday moments. I looked around at the life I'd created, the garden blooming, Emma laughing, Carla's flowers on the table, and felt a quiet sense of peace. I was still here, I was still standing, and I was ready for whatever came next. Sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. I never imagined that the woman I poured my heart out to, the one who was supposed to help me heal, would be the very person stealing my husband and my peace. But life has a way of testing us, of showing us who we are when everything we thought we could count on falls away. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, or if you've ever had to rebuild your life from the ground up, I hope you know you're not alone. Healing isn't quick and it isn't easy. But with time, honesty, and a little bit of grace, it is possible. Sometimes the real strength is in letting go, not just of the people who hurt you, but of the guilt and shame you never deserved to carry. Would you have confronted your therapist or kept the secret? Have you ever discovered a betrayal that changed everything? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who might need a little hope tonight. Thank you for listening and for being part of this family. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, even after the deepest betrayal, you can still choose to begin again.